Hi everyone, welcome back to Jazz and Blues Ukulele with me, Matt Stead. In today's video we're going to have a look at a beautiful piece of music written by Victor Young called Love Letters. This song uses a lot of the chord progressions that we've already learned in the course, such as 1, 6, 2, 5 and 2, 5, 1s, plus a little bit of chromaticism. The reason I wanted to look at this one next though is we're going to delve into the world of chord melody and we're going to play this fingerstyle. We're crossing over into the 1940s now, so we're in the era of film and that was having an influence on music. This song was written by Victor Young with lyrics by Edward Hayman, and it was written for the film of the same name produced by Dick Haymes. The song has since become a jazz standard and it's been covered by loads of artists. Famously in the 1960s, Elvis Presley did a version and Alison Moyet did a version in the 1980s as well. The song was actually originally written as an instrumental and as such we're going to keep it that way and we're going to play this chord melody style. Before we get into the chords and structure, let's just take a look at the technique that we're going to use to pick out chords and melody notes today. We're going to keep things relatively simple and we're going to use our thumb to pretty much pick everything today. Notice that the uke is at a 45-degree angle and I'm going to be picking roughly where the body of the uke meets the neck. That's the sweet spot. We're going to get that lovely dolce sound. Another thing that's worth noticing is that as I strum down, I'll just do an open chord as an example. Notice that most of the movement is actually coming from the elbow. That's going to keep things really strong yet warm sounding. So try not to move your thumb down like this. Make the movement come from the elbow. Notice also that I'm using the middle part of my thumbnail when I strum. This works even if you've got a short nail, you can use the pad for your thumb. The main reason is that it keeps that nice arch so I don't interfere with the soundboard as I strum down. Also it means I'm less likely to catch the side of the thumb and get it caught in the strings as I'm strumming down, which can sound really nasty. We're going to use that classic form of synchronous chord melody where we're playing melody notes at the same time as the chords. It's almost like the melody note is buried within the chord and we need to really tease it out so our ears can hear it. And the golden rule is we strum down with our thumb and we stop after we've strummed whichever string has the melody note on. There's a really nice way to practice this. What we're going to do is we're going to pick out our good old C major scale, just using our thumb to start off. So that's an open C string, 2nd fret for D, open E string, 1st fret for F, 3rd fret for G, open A string, 2nd fret for B, 3rd fret for C. So if I put that all together, next up, I'm going to strum to wherever the melody note was or the scale note within that scale. So for this open C at the start, I'm just going to drag my thumb over the top 2 strings. And then importantly, I'm going to rest it on the E string. It stops me accidentally playing it and it also means that I can dig in and I get that nice low C note coming out loud and clear, like so. Then we're going to put our finger on a D note, 2nd fret, and we're going to do exactly the same thing with our strumming hand. Fantastic. Next up, we've got that open E. Well, that's on the 3rd string down physically, isn't it? So we're going to drag our thumb over 3 strings now and rest it on the A string as so. hear that E note coming out loud and clear. Then we're going to do the same thing as we finger the F note, 1st fret. Same thing as we finger the 3rd fret for a G note. Then the next melody note was an open A, so this time we've got to strum all 4 strings. 2nd fret for B, 3rd fret for C. So what I want you to do is practice your way through that scale, strumming the strings up to and including the scale note. And make sure you can hear that scale coming out really loud and clear. Feel free to pause the video here and practice that exercise round a few times until you're really comfortable with it. What we're going to do is we're going to apply that technique to chords and melody at the same time in this piece, and it's relatively simple. I'll give you an example. Let's jump right in and have a look at the first 2 measures. The first measure starts with a rest, so just don't play anything for a beat. Then we have a G major 7th chord, which would look like this, barring the bottom 3 strings of the 2nd fret. But notice that the melody note is this D note, the 2nd fret of the C string. So we actually only need to drag our thumb over the top 2 strings physically, the G string and the C string. Now, because that melody note is on the C string, we don't actually need to hold down the whole chord if we don't want to. Sometimes it's good practice to hold down the whole chord, just in case you accidentally strum too far, it won't sound so bad. But if you want to, you can just put either your 1st or 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the C string and just strum up to and including that note. And then we just pick that note twice. Start the 2nd measure, we do the same thing again with dragging our thumb over the top 2 strings. Allow that note to breathe for 2 beats, and then we pick another 2 D notes. So the first 2 measures will sound like this. I'm going to count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then we'll hit that first partial chord. 2, 3, 4, 1. Fantastic. Now notice the next measure, we have an E minor 7. Now that would look like this, 0, 2, 0, 2, if we were going to play it all the way. But the melody note, notice, is that open E note, so that's the 3rd string down physically. So we're just going to drag our thumb over the top 3 strings physically. Now, if you want to, you can not bother putting down that 2nd finger because we don't need it. We're not going to strum that far. And that's quite neat. That means we can do the whole of the first 3 measures just with 1 finger down on this D note here, like so. Isn't that neat? The next measure is just an inversion of an E minor 7. It's a D minor 7 played 2 frets higher, turned into an E minor 7. Now for consistency, we're still just strumming the top 3 strings. I'm going to do that nice and lightly because the melody note has finished by that point. Love letters straight from the heart. It's just filling in a gap, so keep that strum nice and light. The next measure, we have a rest at the start, and then we just keep the same principle going. We have a chord, A minor 7 in this instance. The melody note is an E, so we strum up to and including the E string. Then we put our fingers down for this F sharp and G. Okay, so if I put that together. Now notice I'm using my 2nd and 3rd fingers here. This really helps with the next chord. When we come to the A half diminished in the next measure, I have my 3rd finger down on the 3rd fret of the E string, and I only need to put 2 more fingers down to get this chord shape. Isn't that lovely? Then we have a D7 chord, Because the A note is tied, we have that 0 tied to another 0, you only strum the top 3 strings physically of that D7 and just allow that string to breathe. If you accidentally strum the A string, that will be absolutely fine because there's an A note in that D7 chord anyway. Then almost as an opposite of what we did in the previous measure, we have a G to an F sharp rather than an F sharp to a G. So we have that 3-2. Now because this is played as a triplet, you'll notice that little 3 with the line. Make all of these notes from the D7 the same length. Chord, note, notes. So measure 5 and 6 will sound something like this. 3, 4, 1. Okay, fantastic. Now you can take your time for that, pause the video, just make sure you're really comfortable with the timing and the feel for that, and then come back. And we're going to finish it off really simply, just by strumming a G major 7. Here's just a little bit of theory which is interesting. Notice that if you have a look at the chords only along the top, you've played a 1-6-2-5 combination. And remember, that's one of the building blocks of jazz. That's the I got rhythm chords. And hopefully you'll be able to start spotting these progressions. So G is 1, G, A, B, C, D, E, or the E minor 7 is 6, G, A, the A is 2, and then the D7, G, A, B, C, D, the D7 is 5. So a 1-6-2-5 combination, which is really lovely. And also, if you look at the last 3 chords of the top line, we've got that A half diminished, followed by D7, followed by G. That's a mini 2-5-1, isn't it? So we've got a big 1-6-2-5 over the first line, finishing with a mini 2-5-1. You're starting to see those building blocks of jazz. 1-6-2-5s and 2-5-1s. And the chords you just played in measure 6 are the 2 and the 5 of the 2-5-1 at the end of that line. So A half diminished, D7 being 2-5. So to finish it off, we have the 1, just a G major 7 strummed all the way. And on measure 8, I'd just like to use a very gentle nail brush coming down. Ignore that tied note measure 7 into 8, just simply strum measure 7 with your thumb, and then to create almost an echo effect, just nail brush on measure 8. So that's our opening phrase. Let's have a go at those first 8 measures. Join in with me really slowly after 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. Of that E minor 7, and then all open, D7, G major 7, and nail brush. Fantastic, well done. The next few measures look more complex than they are. It's simply a 2-5-1 progression in the key of B minor. So it's like we've modulated slightly out of key centre here. That's relatively simple to do. The C sharp half diminished looks a bit like an A7, but with a finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. You can use either your 2nd or 3rd fingers here, and we strum all the way because the melody note is on the A string. Just pick 2 B notes. Then we go up to an F sharp 7. This is based on this shape, almost like a D7 chord that's been moved right up to the 6th fret. But because the melody note is on the E string, we don't need this finger, so it ends up looking like a straightforward bar. So just hold that bar down on the 6th fret and just strum the top 3 strings physically. Now the next note is tied, so ignore the next note and go to the 7th fret with your 2nd finger and the 9th fret with your little finger. Okay, so that's fantastic. The B minor 7 that follows is quite tricky, so I'll show you 2 ways of doing it. The proper way, if you like, with a bar, and then a much easier way. If we're doing the barred version, what you need to do is take your 2nd finger and place a mini bar on the bottom 2 strings physically. That's the E and the A strings at the 5th fret, like so. Then you're going to reach up and over to the 6th fret of the C string, like so. Can you see how I almost need to be double jointed? This finger needs to bend back on itself to allow this finger to come up over here. That's what makes this quite tricky. Then the index finger reaches up. It doesn't need to bar tight the whole of that 4th fret. It just needs to touch that G string at the 4th fret. Now that's quite a tricky one to get to sound really, really nice. Now it's worth practicing, but if you really struggle, there is an easier way to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to ignore the G string, so we're not going to play that at all. And we're going to take a G minor 7 shape and we're going to play that at the 5th and 6th frets. In effect, we're playing most of the chord, we're just ignoring the note on the G string, which makes it tricky. So use your first finger, bar the bottom 2 strings at the 5th fret, and then just reach over with your second finger to the 6th fret of the C string. And as you drag down with your thumb, start from the C string and move downwards, ignore the G string. Next up we have an E7 flat 9. This just creates a little bit of tension and movement in the piece. 7 flat 9 chords are exactly the same shape as diminished 7th chords. You know, those 4 finger ones that look a little bit like a parallelogram. The easiest way to think about this, to be able to do this chord quickly, is to take a G shape, just like playing a normal G major, move it up to the top 3 strings, and you're going to play that shape at 4 and 5 like so. Then just take your little finger and fill in the gap on the A string. So now that gives you 4, 5, 4, 5. So G shape, played at 4 and 5, little finger down the bottom. And again, there's no melody note on that one, so keep that nice and light as you strum it. So what I'll do now is I'll play through measures 9 to 12 really slowly. You can join in if you feel comfortable, or just have a listen and see how it sounds. So come in after 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1. Up to the 6th fret, 7, 9, and then a B minor 7 chord. However you do it, drag back to that lovely 7 flat 9 chord. Fantastic. Measure 13 is repeating the process that we did earlier, a rest and then a chord. This time the melody note is on the A string, so strum all of the strings open, followed by 2 A notes. Then we have an E7 flat 9. Now because we're only playing the top 3 strings physically, you can just put that G shape on the top 3 strings at fret 4 and just strum. Notice that that 4, which is a G sharp, is tied. So after we play that chord, we ignore the next note and just hit an open A and a B. And to finish off that section, we have an A minor 7. Just use your first finger on the 2nd fret of the G string and either your 2nd or 3rd on the 3rd fret of the A string. Open E note, and then top 3 strings of the D7 chord. And that's the 5 chord. It's creating a sense of tension, which makes you want to go back to the 1 chord, which you do at the start of the next section when you hit that G major 7. Now you've actually done a decent amount of the song, because measures 17 to 22 pretty much repeat what you've already done with one exception. So we just play the top 2 strings of a G major 7th chord. You can just put the 1 finger down and just drag that thumb over the top 2 strings physically. Same in the next measure. Keep it where it is for the start of the E minor 7. Then we've got another inversion of an E minor 7. So the first way we played an E minor 7 is like this. Then we had the inversion at frets 3 and 4, which looked like this. Now we're doing an inversion up here just by barring the whole of the 7th fret. Now to keep things consistent, we're just going to strum down on the top 3 strings physically like this. Then we're going to come back to that D minor shape at 3 and 4 twice. So in effect what we're doing is we're playing E minor 7 3 different ways. Isn't that lovely? Then measures 21 and 22, just like we did earlier. So top 3 strings open, F sharp G, then our half diminished chord, top 3 of a D7, 3, 2. That's great. In measures 23 and 24, I wanted to create a sense of crescendo before we get to the final section. So what we have here is the one chord being played as a major 7, followed by a diminished 7th chord, which is half a step higher. And we saw this in one of the other songs we looked at. Quite often the one chord is followed by a diminished 7th half a step higher. So G is followed by a G sharp diminished 7th. And that creates a really lovely sense of tension in the piece, almost like a cliffhanger if you like. To beef up that tension even more, we've got these straight down strums like so. Now I could have changed the time signature here because we've got 6 strums in a space of where we should have 4 beats, but to keep things simple, I've just notated them as 2 triplets. All you need to think is that you strum down 6 times relatively quickly using the nails of your strumming hands like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we change to that G sharp diminished 7th shape on measures 4 and 5, and we do 3 quick strums, followed by another down strum that we just hang. So if you put that all together, it will sound like this. Yeah, cool, isn't it? See how it creates that sense of cliffhanger, sending us into the final section. The next section starts with the 4 chord, which is a really common thing to do. The 4 chord creates a sense of change. G, A, B, C. So we have a C major 7th, and we just strum that all the way. Open A and B. Then we have an F7, which would normally be played like this up at the 5th fret. But because the melody note is this high D note here, we're going to do away with this 2nd finger and just strum the whole of that 5th fret. Notice that I often double up my bars when I go up the fretboard, just so I can apply a nice amount of pressure and get a really clean sounding chord. Then the next few notes are all hit on the E string. Keep that bar where it is and introduce your little finger, your pinky, to the 8th fret, 3rd finger on the 7th fret, and then let go and your finger's in the right place for the 5th fret. Okay, so that measure, we just walk down. Fantastic. Bottom line then, we have this G major 7th. Notice that we've had this C note added to it. And that's really lovely because we have this descending line. So to get that descending line in there, we play a G major 7th, but we also add that C note, strum the whole lot. Take your finger away for B, lift up for open A, and the G note at the 3rd fret of the E string. So that will sound like this. Yeah, lovely. Now remember in Night and Day in the last lesson we had those lovely descending chromatic chords where each chord was half a step below the one that preceded it. And that's what we've got here in miniature. We've got a type of B chord, a B diminished 7th, a type of B flat chord, a B flat 7, followed by a type of A chord, A minor 7. So we have this chromatic descending movement, B, B flat, A in miniature, which is really, really lovely. And then interestingly, that A minor 7 is the start of a 2-5-1 in G to finish off the piece. A minor 7, D7, G, 2-5-1. So again, we're finishing with one of the most common building blocks in all of jazz. I've got a little trick to make this progression a little bit easier for you. So for the B diminished 7th, what I want you to do is use a G shape on the top 3 strings physically, as far left as you can go on your fretboard. So in effect, we're taking a G major shape and we're moving it up towards your nose and then backwards. Now keep those 3 fingers held down and put your little finger on the 3rd fret of the E string, like so. Now you're just going to dig in after you've played the top 3 strings. And then for the next chord, you can just take away your little finger. Isn't that cool? So we get this. It's just a nice way of putting those 2 chords together. If you want to go more traditional, you can just use your 1st finger up here on this G sharp note and 2 fingers down here. And then just rearrange your fingers into into that G shape after. Either way is absolutely fine. So we've got that G major 7 with the added C. And then these 2 chords. Isn't that lovely? Then to finish off, we've got this A minor 7 played open, top 3 strings only. 2 E notes. Then a Hawaiian D 7th chord with this high C note added because that's the melody. Then we go to a D7 flat 9. Remember those 7 flat 9 shapes are the same as diminished 7th shapes. But because the melody note is this open A note, just take your little finger away so it just looks like a G chord that's been moved upwards. And then finally, we can just drop down to this 2nd fret of the A string. And then we finish with a G chord, but we're only going to strum the top 3 strings. The reason we're only strumming those top 3 strings is that we finish on a G note, which is the tonic. It's the note that it feels rested on. We get that final resolution. So 2, 5, and 1. There's your resolution. Isn't that lovely? Just notice that from measure 28 we have our first 2 pieces of musical direction here right at the end. We've got a rit that stands for ritandando, which just means slow down in effect. And then on the last 2 measures we have a decrescendo. So what does that mean? It's really simple. It just means that when we get to measure 28 we start to slow down the tempo. Imagine you've put the brakes on. So we're going to go nice and slow now. And then the decrescendo means we get quieter. We're still slowing down. So that final chord is very gentle. Okay, so slowing down and then quietening down at the end. And it just creates this lovely kind of dynamic. So almost like the song is ending in a gentle whisper, which is perfect. Should we just try that outro together? Let's try it from measure 25, that's C major 7. Come in after 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1. C major 7. Bar the whole of the 5th fret. G major 7 with that high C. And then remember we're going to slow down here, really put the brakes on. And then A minor 7 open, slow. And we quieten down. And a whisper. Fantastic, well done. Now notice there's also a funny little marker on that final chord. It looks like a dot and almost like a rainbow over the top. I think it looks a bit like a bird's eye. That's a fermata. It means a note or a chord of indeterminate length. Basically it just means when you hit that final chord nice and gently, don't interrupt it. Let your ukulele tell you when the chord is finished. So don't touch the strings, just allow them to ring out and your uke will tell you when that chord is finished. And that's it, you've done it. You can piece the whole of that song together. As with all of these pieces, especially this one because we're looking at fingerstyle, really take your time with it. Don't rush this. You could work on this for a few weeks. Really take measure by measure, starting really slowly and just increasing that tempo a little bit each day as you go along. And as you're playing it, be conscious of the sound of the chords and the progressions. See if you can hear those 1, 6, 2, 5 progressions and those little 2, 5, 1s where we have that sense of movement and resolution. But most of all, just have loads and loads of fun with this one. This is one of my favourite pieces to play when I just want to relax and I want something really ethereal and gentle sounding. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Well, take care everyone, happy uking, and I will see you in your next jazz and blues lesson very soon. Uke on everyone!